Hi, guys. Welcome to We Can't Do This Alone, the podcast for philanthropy professionals who know that collaboration isn't just important, it's essential. I'm your host, Erin Stitzel, and I'm so glad you're here. I have spent the last 20 years as a philanthropy professional, and over those 2 decades, I have learned one powerful truth. We can't do this alone. When we work with allies like board members, executives, physicians, nurses, faculty, deans, volunteers, campaign cabinet members, we raise significantly more money for our institutions. Thank you so much for tuning into this first episode. I wanted to take some time to share a little bit more about me and my story and what this show is going to be all about. I began my career in philanthropy back in 2004 at Mount Carmel Health System, which is a big Catholic healthcare system here in Columbus, Ohio, and a part of Trinity Health. Before you ask, I want to share that no, I'm not one of those crazed Ohio State Buckeye fans. Absolutely, yes, I do root for the Buckeyes, but I'm actually from Cincinnati, and I'm a proud Ohio University Bobcat. I have a journalism degree, and I consider myself a journalist at heart. I love sharing other people's stories, so starting this podcast was a natural extension of that. I started at Mount Carmel as a public relations intern, but I quickly found the foundation, where I spent the next 12 years advancing almost every part of healthcare philanthropy: special events, grants, annual giving, communications, major gifts. In 2008, I started Mount Carmel's first Grateful Patient program. This was really significant because I found that grateful patient philanthropy and clinician engagement in philanthropy is my passion and my life calling. I spent my last 6 years at Mount Carmel, up at Mount Carmel St. Anne's Hospital in Westerville, where I had the honor and the privilege of sitting on a hospital C-suite team, where I truly learned the ins and outs of running a hospital. It was during this time that we launched a big comprehensive campaign to build the new Heart Tower up at Mount Carmel St. Anne's. And it was during this campaign that I truly learned the importance of working with allies. During this campaign, I worked with countless allies like doctors, my hospital president, and our amazing campaign cabinet members to raise historic giving for Mount Carmel. As fate would have it, then in 2015, I met a woman named Betsy Chapin-Taylor, who's the CEO of Accordion. At the time, Betsy was a consultant helping Trinity Health, Mount Carmel's parent company, start a system office for philanthropy for over 42 foundations and 92 hospitals across the United States. Fast forward for a few months after I met Betsy, and I found myself resigning of my job of 12 years to go work for Accordion. At the time, Accordion was a 1-year-old company, and I was the third consultant to join the company. At the time, I'll never forget thinking about Sheryl Sandberg in the book Lean In, where she said, when someone offers you a seat on the rocket ship, you take it, you don't ask what seat. That's exactly what I did with Accordion. It is by far to this day the most important professional decision I've ever made in my life. I could not imagine my life without working at Accordion. My Accordion colleagues are my family. We work hard, we play, we have fun, and my colleagues are absolute geniuses. And I hope so many of them join me on the show. For the past decade at Accordion, I've had the honor and privilege of working in over 80 hospitals across the United States to help develop and implement grateful patient strategies and clinician engagement strategies for philanthropy. Because you see, in healthcare, patients and families are the most likely people to make significant gifts to healthcare. They do this because they want to express gratitude for the care received. And our clinical allies, our doctors, our nurses, our advanced practice providers, our service line leaders, those are our absolute best allies to help us identify, cultivate, and steward our donors. I've spent so much of my career teaching doctors and clinicians how to work in partnership with philanthropy. And more importantly, I've spent so much time teaching philanthropy officers how to build relationships with and how to work in partnership with their allies. Because we know when we work with our allies, we raise more money. And I want to share that this is not just my opinion. Tons of research has been published to prove this. For example, back in 2010, The Association for Healthcare Philanthropy published a study with the Virginia Mason Franciscan Healthcare System out in Seattle, looking at who are our best allies to help us identify our donors. And this study found that when a physician identifies and introduces a prospect to the foundation, the average gift was almost $500,000 versus an average gift of only $30,000 when the philanthropy officer worked alone. Several years ago, I was working with an organization that was in a $100 million campaign. And when we looked at their campaign gifts, we found that the average campaign gift when the philanthropy officer worked with an ally was 600% higher than the average gift when the philanthropy officer worked alone. Again, going back to my days at Mount Carmel, the 12 years that I spent there, I found in my own personal experience that any significant gift that I closed, I had an ally sitting by my side, whether it was a doctor or a campaign cabinet member or my hospital president. Anytime that I brought the ally alongside with me, I was able to close a much higher gift. Now, I was a decent fundraiser. I could absolutely do it alone. But I found when I was working with others, bringing others along, we raised more money. So that is what this podcast is all about. Yes, I could speak all day about this subject, but why not take you straight to the source? Why not bring on those doctors? Bring on those executives. Let's bring on those volunteers, those campaign cabinet members. Let's bring them on with the philanthropy officers that they work with, and they can share with you firsthand their stories. They can share their challenges, their success stories, their tips for working together, their tips for working in collaboration to raise significant funds for the organization. That is what this podcast is all about. I'm also so excited to share stories of giving from the ally's point of view. So many times in philanthropy, we share the stories of the donors. And absolutely we should. They're incredible stories. But nobody's talking about the stories from that other point of view. How cool is it to be able to share the stories of the allies who worked so hard in collaboration to make those significant gifts happen? So yes, you might be thinking, this is a healthcare podcast. And yes, I've absolutely spent the majority of my career in healthcare. I've worked with 400 doctors. Working with doctors is a huge part of who I am, my favorite part about my job. So yes, doctors are going to be a big part of this. In fact, next week's episode is titled The Truth About Physicians and Philanthropy. I hope you'll turn in. But I want to make it resoundingly clear that this podcast is more than just healthcare. I want to bring on allies and philanthropy officers from every sector and every industry within the nonprofit world. Because again, when we work with allies, we raise more money. I want to share stories from all walks of life in philanthropy and all members of the nonprofit community. And you, if you've got a story or if you have an ally that you have worked with and seen tremendous success, I want to hear from you. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me at Erin@wecan'tdothisalone.com. Shoot me an email and I want to bring you on the show. Okay, so I want to wrap up this first episode. Thank you so much to my friends and family who have been listening to me talk about this podcast for probably 3 or 4 years now. I cannot thank you enough for always having my back, for your support, your words of encouragement. I love you so much. You know who you are. Thank you so much. I would also be remiss if I didn't say thank you to all of my colleagues and the folks that I've worked with over the last 20 years. I cannot tell you how much of an honor it's been to work with you. And I hope to bring so many of you on to share your stories. I hope you will come on the podcast to share the stories of the successes that you have had. And again, I am so honored to have played a little role in that, and I cannot thank you enough. Last but not least, I want to thank the production team at Hey Boom Media and Erica Carl for being that last step in helping me finally launch this podcast. Erica, you are a queen, and it has been wonderful working with you. And I cannot thank you enough for, again, helping me to finally get this baby launched. I am so thankful. So that wraps up today's episode. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. Next week, we're going to talk all about physicians and philanthropy. I hope you will tune in to watch it. And after that, we're going to start bringing in the guests. I can't wait to start bringing folks on. That's when the fun's really going to begin. So again, thank you so, so much for tuning in to listen. You have my undying gratitude. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week.